A poor boy finds a millionaire crying at his own mother's grave. What he says leaves him shocked. The morning air was sharp with cold as a faint layer of frost shimmered on the grass of Oak Ridge Cemetery in Ohio. Crows cried in the distance, and the wind rattled the dried leaves clinging to a nearby tree. A tall man in a dark wool coat stood still, then suddenly dropped to his knees before a modest grave marked Julia Carter, 1986-2024. His shoulders shook. He wasn't just crying, he was breaking apart. This was Vincent Blake. The Vincent Blake, billionaire founder of one of the country's most powerful pharmaceutical companies. His name was on hospitals, research labs, political fundraisers. But here, stripped of his image, his money, and his armor, he was simply a man mourning the woman who once made him feel alive. For 12 years, he'd visited this grave in secret, always alone. He never told anyone about Julia. She was the one thing in his life that wasn't part of the plan. And when she left him without a word, he buried the pain in work, power, and silence. But he always came back. Like a ritual he couldn't abandon. This morning, though, something was different. Vincent heard footsteps approaching behind him. Not hurried, not shy, just steady. He turned his head slightly. A boy stood there. He was maybe 13 or 14. Skinny. Wearing a worn-out hoodie 2 sizes too big, jeans that dragged at the cuffs, and holding a handful of wilted daisies. His hair was unkempt, his eyes too serious for his age, but there was no fear in him. He stepped closer and looked straight at the tombstone. "That's my mom," the boy said. Vincent froze. Slowly he turned to face the boy fully, still on his knees, stunned, silent. The child looked back, then added, with a kind of guarded calm, "I'm Eli." Vincent's chest tightened, but he didn't speak right away. He studied the boy's face. There was something familiar there. A curve in the jaw, the way his eyebrows arched. He looked again at the name on the stone. Julia Carter. The name rang like an echo inside him. He'd searched for her once, when she disappeared. Had people looked, found nothing, no trace. Now this boy, this stranger, said she was his mother? "I knew your mom," Vincent said carefully, his voice uneven. "A long time ago." "She died last month," Eli replied, his fingers tightening around the wilting flowers. "Lung failure. She was sick for a while." "I'm sorry," Vincent said. Eli didn't respond. He bent down and placed the daisies by the grave. "It's okay. People die. I just didn't want her to be alone today." The boy's words hit like a punch to the ribs. Vincent had always believed he was the only one who remembered Julia, the only one who missed her. But now, suddenly, he wasn't alone in his grief. This boy, her son, stood here too. And if Eli was telling the truth, Vincent's mind raced. How could Julia have had a son and never told him? "Where do you live?" Vincent asked, trying to sound casual. "Down the block. Mrs. Evans is letting me stay for a while." "No family?" "No one that wants me." The honesty of that answer landed like a stone. Vincent stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his trousers. He looked at Eli again, really looked, and for the first time in years, something shifted inside him. The usual control, the practiced detachment. It cracked. He wasn't just mourning Julia now. He was staring into the face of a truth that could rewrite everything. "I'd like to talk to you again," Vincent said, his tone quiet but intentional. Eli shrugged. "Okay. Knee." And just like that, he turned and walked away, back down the cemetery path, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets, the weight of the world clearly hanging on his small shoulders. Vincent stood frozen, 1,000 thoughts crashing against each other like waves. He'd come here expecting grief, regret, another year of silent questions. But this morning gave him something else. not closure, a door. And now, for the first time in a very long time, Vincent Blake wasn't sure what came next. The streets of Fairview, a quiet suburb of Columbus, looked frozen in time. Small houses stood shoulder to shoulder, most with chipped paint and cluttered porches, but a few still held on to pride with tidy gardens or wind chimes that danced in the cold air. Vincent's black luxury sedan looked wildly out of place as it crawled down Elm Street, drawing curious eyes from behind curtains. He hadn't set foot in a neighborhood like this in decades. His world was penthouses, boardrooms, and estates surrounded by tall gates. Yet now, he was here, searching. He stopped in front of a small blue house with a crooked mailbox and a worn sign that read, Evans. Eli had mentioned her, Mrs. Evans, a neighbor. Vincent hadn't planned this visit. He'd just gotten in the car and driven until instinct brought him here. Now he sat with the engine idling, unsure of what to do. Before he could decide, the front door creaked open. A stout woman in her 70s stepped out, wearing a thick cardigan over her floral dress, her sharp eyes narrowing as they met his. "Can I help you?" she asked, clearly unimpressed by the suit and car. "I'm looking for Eli," Vincent said, stepping out of the vehicle. Mrs. Evans gave him a long, suspicious look. "You're not from around here?" "No, I met him yesterday. At the cemetery." Her face softened just slightly. "You knew his mother?" "Yes, a long time ago." There was a pause. Then she stepped aside. "He's out back, drawing." Vincent followed her through the cramped living room where the scent of cinnamon hung in the air. Through the back door, he found Eli sitting cross-legged on a worn picnic table, sketching something with a stubby pencil. He looked up when he heard footsteps. His eyes didn't show surprise, only wariness. "You came," Eli said flatly. "I did." A long silence stretched between them. Vincent glanced at the notebook. "What are you drawing?" Eli flipped the page over. "Nothing." Vincent didn't press. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bench, unsure of what to say. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, faced the media, advised presidents, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this. How to speak to a boy who might be his son. "I think Julia may have once tried to write me," Vincent said quietly. "Years ago. But I changed offices. I never saw a letter." Eli said nothing, his pencil tapping the notebook. "I didn't know she had a child," Vincent added. Eli finally looked at him, eyes sharp. "Why does it matter now?" Vincent hesitated. "Because if you're my son, it changes everything." Eli's voice dropped to a bitter whisper. "She never said anything about you. Not once." Vincent's heart sank. He had imagined some hidden connection, a trace of his name in Eli's childhood memories. But there was nothing. "She raised me by herself. She worked late shifts, got sick, and still tried to smile. That's the person I knew." "I'm not trying to replace her," Vincent said, "or erase what she gave you. I'd like a chance to be part of your life." Another pause. Then Eli muttered, "Why?" The question cut deep. Why now? Why him? Why after so many years of absence and silence? Vincent didn't have a perfect answer. Only this: because I failed her, and I won't fail you. For the first time, Eli looked unsure, not convinced, but not entirely closed off either. Inside the house, Mrs. Evans watched from the window with folded arms. She'd seen men like Vincent before, men with too much money and too little time. But something about the way he sat there, not talking, just being, made her believe this visit wasn't just guilt. It might be something else, maybe something real. The next few days unfolded like an uneasy dance between two people who didn't yet know if they were family or strangers. Vincent returned to Elm Street more than once, always unannounced, always cautious. He brought nothing extravagant, no gifts, no money, only himself. That, in his world, was already a leap. But for Eli, it wasn't enough. They met on park benches, walked along quiet sidewalks, sat in silence more than they spoke. Eli listened more than he talked, his walls high and thick. He answered questions with one-word replies, and never asked any in return. But Vincent didn't give up. He learned that Eli liked to draw buildings, not cartoons or superheroes, but real places. He sketched abandoned warehouses, decaying apartment blocks, quiet churches, places that had meaning. One afternoon, Vincent brought a worn book of architectural sketches and left it on the table beside Eli. The boy didn't say anything, but the next time they met, the book was in his backpack. Progress, maybe. Still, the air between them was heavy. Unspoken questions hovered in every moment. Where were you all this time? Why now? What do you really want? One afternoon, Vincent broke the silence. I had a DNA test done, he said quietly. Eli looked up, startled. Without asking me? I found a cup you used, from Mrs. Evans's kitchen. You stole my DNA? Eli stood up, furious. Vincent stayed seated. I needed to know the truth. You could have just asked. And if you said no, Eli clenched his jaw. Then maybe you weren't ready to know. There was a long silence between them, the wind cutting through the still trees in the park. Vincent finally said, You're my son, Eli. The boy didn't react, didn't move. He just stared at him, breathing hard. I'm sorry, Vincent added. I should have done it differently. Eli sat back down slowly. Yeah, you should have. After that day, things changed. Not instantly, not obviously, but something shifted. Eli didn't avoid him anymore. He started asking questions about Julia, about Vincent's life, about why his mother left. Vincent answered honestly when he could and admitted what he didn't know. He told Eli about the early years, how he and Julia met, how she left suddenly and never contacted him again, how he'd spent years thinking it was his fault, then burying that guilt under ambition. She said you were brilliant, Eli said once, unexpectedly. She never said your name, but she told me once that the man she loved was brilliant, cold, but brilliant. Vincent looked away. She was right about both. Still, there were moments when the past came crashing back. One night, Eli asked, Why do you care now? Because I'm a kid? Or because you're lonely? The question hurt, but Vincent answered honestly. Because you remind me of the one thing in my life that was real. Eli didn't reply, but the next time they met, he brought 2 sandwiches and handed Vincent one without a word. Trust in small gestures. But not everyone approved of this new connection. Mrs. Evans, though warm at first, grew cautious. He's a child, not your redemption, she told Vincent in private. You don't get to walk in, play father, and then vanish when things get complicated. I'm not leaving, Vincent promised. You've lived your life on your terms, Mr. Blake. That boy never had that luxury. He's been abandoned once. Don't let it happen again. Vincent understood. This wasn't a business deal he could close. This was a life, raw, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Later that week, Vincent invited Eli to his office for the first time. The boy stepped into the towering glass building with wide eyes, notebook in hand. Vincent introduced him to his assistant as a special guest. Eli didn't say much, but he drew constantly. The lobby's skylight, the elevator buttons, the skyline from the window. Vincent watched from behind his desk, something in his chest tightening. This wasn't a son he could mold. Eli wasn't a project. He was a person. And maybe the only person who didn't care about Vincent Blake's fortune, power, or reputation. That made him the most valuable person in the room. The snow began to melt, revealing the cracked sidewalks and muddy lawns of late February. With spring approaching, so did change. Quiet, subtle, and uncertain. One subplot emerged from the simplest place. Eli's drawings. Mrs. Evans found one in the kitchen, a sketch of her house, but with extra details. A ramp instead of stairs, wider doors, a railing added by the porch. Accessibility upgrades, he'd scribbled in the margin. "You dreaming of becoming an architect?" she asked him gently. Eli shrugged. "Just thought it'd help if your hip gets worse." She smiled, hiding the sting in her chest. No child should think that way, always planning for other people's burdens. But that's who Eli was: observant, thoughtful, practical. Too old for his age. That week, Vincent quietly hired a local contractor and had the changes installed. He didn't tell Eli it was his idea. He let Mrs. Evans take the credit. Some acts of care, he was learning, didn't need a name attached. Meanwhile, Vincent's personal life began to shift. He started canceling late meetings. He missed a fundraiser. His assistant, Nora, noticed. She had worked with him for nearly 15 years and had never seen him leave the office before 10 p.m. Now, twice a week, he disappeared around 4. "Everything okay?" she asked one day. Vincent simply replied, "I have somewhere more important to be." Nora didn't push, but her curiosity grew. That same week, Eli called Vincent for the first time. It was a Saturday. The boy had a school project, a Group 1. His assigned partner bailed, and he had no internet at Mrs. Evans's house. Vincent didn't hesitate. He drove to pick him up. They worked together in Vincent's study, side by side. Eli typed while Vincent helped structure the paragraphs. When it was done, Eli handed over his sketchbook. "I designed a house," he said almost shyly. "For people like Mrs. Evans. Low income, safe, warm, everything's reused materials." Vincent flipped through the pages, stunned. "This is incredible." Eli gave a half smile. "She says I see things other people don't." "You do." This moment, quiet, pure, unforced, was the most real connection Vincent had felt in years. But not everything was falling neatly into place. Eli still refused to move in with him. "I'm not some lost puppy you can rescue," he snapped one afternoon when Vincent gently suggested he didn't need to live off favors anymore. "I didn't mean it that way," Vincent said. "Yes, you did," Eli muttered. "You think money fixes everything." "I think showing up matters," Vincent replied. Eli turned away. "You didn't show up when it mattered." That hurt. But Vincent didn't argue. Instead, he waited. Meanwhile, Mrs. Evans received a surprise call from a family court representative. Vincent had filed to gain shared guardianship. Not full custody, but something symbolic, something real. She had mixed feelings. He was a good man trying hard, but that didn't erase the years he wasn't there. Still, she said yes, with conditions. "He stays in school, you don't overpromise, and you listen to him." "I will," Vincent promised. By spring break, Vincent invited Eli on a weekend trip. Not far, just a small lakeside cabin. Not luxury, no media, no bodyguards. Just 2 people, space and air. Eli hesitated, then said yes. It was the first time they'd be alone, without Mrs. Evans or city noise or interruptions. It would change everything. The cabin was old but sturdy. It stood alone at the edge of a thawing lake, surrounded by towering pines that swayed gently in the wind. The dock stretched across fractured ice like a fragile memory. Inside, the space was simple. 2 creaky beds, a stone fireplace, and a table that had seen better days. There was no television, no cell service, no distractions. Just silence, space, and the raw sound of breathing. Vincent had never stayed anywhere like it. His usual retreats involved private chefs and guarded gates, but this trip wasn't about luxury. It was about time, about presence. Eli didn't say much on the way there. He sat with his sketchbook on his lap, eyes fixed on the passing scenery. Vincent didn't push conversation. Instead, He let the road speak. Every mile they traveled together was one they hadn't shared before. That first night, they lit a fire in the hearth. Vincent tried to roast hot dogs, awkwardly holding the stick too close. His caught flame and turned to ash in seconds. Eli burst out laughing. "Seriously?" Vincent chuckled. "I'm used to food that comes with garnish and waiters." "You're hopeless," Eli said, shaking his head. "Here." He showed him how to angle the skewer, how to rotate it slowly. For the first time their hands touched briefly. Vincent's fingers were cold, Eli's steady. Later they played cards on the floor. Vincent taught him poker, the basics. Eli picked it up fast and started winning. He grinned as he collected imaginary chips. "You're really bad at bluffing." "I'm rusty," Vincent admitted. "Nah, you've probably always been bad at it." The next morning, they walked along the lake's edge. The ice had started to crack, thin sheets drifting near the shore. Eli picked up a flat stone and skipped it. 3 perfect bounces. Vincent tried. His stone landed with a single plop. "Wow," Eli said. "You need a lot of work." They laughed. Real laughter. The kind that felt earned. Back at the cabin, Vincent chopped firewood. Badly. His hands weren't used to this kind of work. Eli sat on the porch sketching. He was quiet for a long time, then suddenly asked, "Did you love her?" Vincent paused, axe in hand. "Yes," he said honestly. "More than I ever said out loud." "Why'd she leave?" "I think because I was too closed off. I kept her on the outside. I loved her, but I didn't know how to make her feel safe." "She used to cry sometimes," Eli said quietly, eyes still on his paper. "At night. I pretended to be asleep." Vincent swallowed hard. "I didn't know. She said her old life felt like drowning." "She wasn't wrong," he murmured. "I made it that way." That night they sat in silence for a while. Then Eli reached for the deck of cards again. They played 2 rounds. Eli won both. "You're improving," he said, half grinning. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "At cards?" "At this." Vincent looked at him. "You mean being here?" "Yeah, you're not as stiff." Vincent smiled faintly. "Thank you, I think." The next day, as they packed to leave, Vincent accidentally knocked over Eli's sketchbook. It fell open to a new drawing. It wasn't a forest, not a cabin, not even Mrs. Evans's house. It was Vincent's estate. But different. In Eli's version, there were trees lining the long driveway. A swing set in the backyard. A garden. The cold lines of the mansion had been softened. Humanized. "You drew this?" Vincent asked, eyes locked on the page. Eli nodded slowly. "It's just an idea. A version of something." Vincent turned the page again. There was a small figure standing on the porch. A boy holding a dog on a leash. A car in the driveway. A basketball hoop above the garage. "Do you want to live there?" Vincent asked, voice soft. Eli hesitated. "I don't know." "You don't have to." "I know." But if you ever wanted to—" "I'd need my own room," Eli said quickly, his voice guarded. "And no weird maids touching my stuff." "Done." "And I still don't call you Dad." "Not yet." "Fair." Eli pulled the sketchbook toward himself. "I'm not saying yes, I'm just not saying no anymore." Vincent looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since that day at the cemetery, hope didn't feel like a burden. It felt possible. Back in Columbus, life resumed its pace. School for Eli, meetings for Vincent. But something fundamental had shifted between them. Eli didn't move into the mansion, not yet. But he started spending weekends there. He claimed it was only for the food, or the better Wi-Fi, or the quiet. But Vincent knew better. There were new habits now, small rituals that neither of them acknowledged out loud. On Fridays, Vincent picked him up after school. Eli never waited at the curb, but he was always nearby, watching for the car. On Saturdays, they cooked together. Pancakes one weekend, spaghetti the next. Vincent made a mess. Eli pretended to hate it. Sunday afternoons were for walks or sketching. Mrs. Evans, who remained Eli's legal guardian for now, watched all this with careful eyes. She still called once a week to check in, and Vincent answered every time. One Saturday morning, as Eli flipped pancakes, he asked suddenly, "Why didn't you ever marry anyone else?" Vincent looked up from slicing strawberries. "I never wanted to." "That simple?" "No," he admitted. "But, yeah, I always compared them to her." Eli nodded, flipping a pancake that landed perfectly. "She compared everyone to you too, even when she hated you." There was no anger in his voice, just observation. Later that week, Vincent was scheduled to attend a major gala for his company. Normally, he'd go alone or with a business partner. This time he invited Eli. "You want me to go to a suit thing?" Eli said, raising an eyebrow. "I think you'd hate it." "I already do." Vincent smiled. "That's fair." Still, Eli went. He wore a jacket, a little too big, and kept his sketchbook under his arm. The room was full of powerful people, glittering gowns and fake smiles. Eli stuck close to Vincent's side, quiet, observant, until he noticed something across the room. A framed poster. One of Vincent's old campaigns, a photo of a sterile lab and a young girl in a hospital bed, smiling weakly. "That's fake," Eli whispered. Vincent followed his gaze. "It's marketing." Eli frowned. "Feels like lying." Vincent didn't argue. He looked at the photo again and saw what Eli saw. Polish, not truth. Image, not substance. Later that night, Vincent pulled Eli aside in the hallway. "You were right. That photo? That campaign? I approved it because it looked clean, hopeful. But I think I stopped seeing the real people behind those numbers a long time ago." Eli shrugged. "Maybe now you'll start." That conversation stayed with Vincent. The next week, he called his PR team and canceled a pending media push. He started showing up at the company's foundation events in person. No cameras, just people. Eli didn't ask for these changes, but he noticed them. At school, his drawings changed too. Fewer buildings falling apart, more parks, more homes, more people. His teachers asked about the shift. Eli didn't explain. The most important moment came quietly on a rainy Thursday. Vincent arrived at Mrs. Evans's to drop off a book Eli had forgotten. Eli opened the door in socks, his hair damp from a shower. "Hey," he said casually. Vincent handed him the book. "You left it on the kitchen counter." "Thanks." Then, as Vincent turned to leave, Eli called out, "Wait." He hesitated. "Yeah?" Eli looked at the book, then at him. "You don't have to knock next time." Vincent blinked. "You sure?" Eli nodded. "Yeah." It was the smallest of invitations, but for Vincent Blake, a man who once stood alone by a grave, convinced he had lost everything, it felt like the door of a life he never thought he'd have was finally opening. Spring gave way to summer, and the rhythm between Vincent and Eli found a steady, if fragile, flow. There were still pauses, still unspoken doubts between them, but the cracks had begun to fill with something more than just routine. Trust, maybe, or something close to it. Vincent continued showing up, not with speeches or promises, but with presence. He helped Eli study for finals, sat beside him during dental appointments, even waded through long art supply shopping trips, where Eli spent 20 minutes choosing the right pencils. Vincent didn't rush him. That was new for both of them. One Saturday, Eli was unusually quiet. They had plans to visit a museum downtown, but he lingered on the back porch instead, sketching lines over and over. "What's on your mind?" Vincent asked. Eli didn't look up. "There's a father-son event at school next week. Just a lunch thing. But I'm not going." Vincent sat across from him. Why not? I don't want people asking questions, or thinking things. Vincent nodded slowly. Do you want me to come, if you did go? Eli shrugged. I don't know. Vincent didn't push. Well, I'm around if you change your mind. That Wednesday, Eli texted him at 7:12 a.m. You can come, but no suit. And don't be weird. Vincent showed up in jeans and a plain button-down. They ate tacos under the school's courtyard tree. Some kids stared. One boy asked, Is that your dad? Eli hesitated, then said, Yeah. He didn't look at Vincent when he said it, but Vincent didn't need eye contact to feel the weight of that word. That moment changed something inside him. Back at work, Vincent found himself reevaluating more than just family. He realized how many decisions he'd made out of habit, ego, or cold efficiency. Now, small things felt different. The way he greeted his staff, how he talked to the janitor, even the time he started leaving the office. One evening, he told Nora, his assistant, I'm taking a break from acquisitions, just for now. Nora raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? No, Vincent replied. But maybe I should have paused a long time ago. Meanwhile, Eli's sketches evolved. He entered a local youth art show. His project, a reimagined neighborhood park, complete with murals, recycled benches, and a community garden. Vincent attended the opening night, wearing a hoodie Eli picked out for him. When the judge announced the winners, Eli's name wasn't called. He shrugged, pretending not to care. But Vincent noticed the way his jaw tensed. Afterward, Vincent knelt beside him. Your design made people feel something. That's more than a ribbon can do. Eli gave him a tired smile. You're still bad at pep talks. I'm learning. As summer deepened, Eli spent more nights at Vincent's house. His room, was filled with drawings, books, and things he didn't have to pack up every Sunday night. One day, while cleaning the garage, they found a box of old letters Julia had written. Most were unsent drafts. One was addressed to VB, but never mailed. Eli sat on the floor and read in silence. Then he handed the letter to Vincent. It was short. Julia had written, I don't know how to tell you. I don't even know if you'd care. But I had to protect him. Not just from your world, but from mine too. He deserves better than both of us right now. Maybe someday you'll meet him. Maybe you'll recognize him the moment you see his eyes. If that happens, don't run. Just listen. Vincent folded the letter carefully, hands trembling. Eli watched him. She was right. You didn't run. No, Vincent whispered. Not this time. That night, Vincent didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, wondering how many versions of his life he'd missed because he hadn't been brave enough to ask questions. In the morning, Eli found him in the kitchen, brewing terrible coffee. Eli took one sip and grimaced. You're still a disaster at this. I'll get better, Vincent said. You said that last week. I meant it last week, too. Eli smiled, really smiled. Growth wasn't grand or dramatic. It was in the routines they built, the silences they filled, the wounds they didn't pretend to heal overnight. It was in Eli learning to knock on Vincent's office door without fear. In Vincent learning to wait, to listen, to stay. By late summer, something resembling stability had settled between Vincent and Eli. The mansion, once cold and echoing, now bore traces of real life. Sketchbooks left on coffee tables, sneakers at the door, music drifting from Eli's room. Vincent no longer walked through the halls as a man in a house, but as someone returning home. Still, unspoken questions lingered in the air, especially around Julia. Eli had learned bits and pieces about her past, but there were blanks Vincent hadn't filled in. He said he was protecting Eli. But the truth was more complicated. Vincent didn't have all the answers himself. That tension began to rise when Eli found a framed photo tucked away in Vincent's study drawer. It was of Julia and Vincent, younger, arms around each other in front of a cabin. That cabin. On the back, Julia had written in blue ink, "Before everything changed." Eli showed him the photo. "When was this?" Vincent looked at it for a long moment. "A few months before she left." Did something happen?" "She found out about a deal I made. I prioritized a patent over a patient access program. It would have made us billions, but it meant fewer people could afford the treatment. She saw the paperwork. She left the next day." Eli processed that quietly. "She said you weren't cruel, just numb." Vincent nodded. "She wasn't wrong." The conversation left a silence between them that lasted for days. Eli didn't stay over that weekend. He didn't respond to texts right away. Vincent didn't chase. He waited. When Eli returned the following Thursday, he walked into the study and said, "You're not that man anymore." Vincent exhaled. "Thank you." "I didn't come back for you," Eli added. "I came back because I believe people change. That's a better reason." As autumn approached, another decision loomed: the guardianship hearing. Vincent had filed for shared legal responsibility months ago, but Eli would soon have to speak to the court himself. Mrs. Evans met with them both. "I'll support whatever you want," she told Eli, "but I need to hear it from you, not just him." Eli glanced at Vincent, then said, "I want it. And you understand what it means?" "I do." Vincent didn't speak. He let Eli answer every question himself. Later that night, the two of them sat on the mansion steps with hot cocoa. The wind was colder now, biting at their sleeves. "Are you nervous?" Vincent asked. "A little." "I am too." "You don't seem nervous." Vincent looked at him. "I never let people see it. That's something I'm still working on." Eli took a sip of cocoa. "You're better than you were." Vincent smiled. "So are you." There was one more piece to resolve: the letter Julia had never sent. Eli asked Vincent to bring it to court. "She never mailed it," Vincent said. "I know," Eli replied, "but it still speaks for her." In that moment it became clear: the climax of their journey wouldn't be dramatic or violent. It wouldn't involve a fight, a chase, or a tragic twist. It would be something quieter, braver, the kind of courage it takes to stand up in a courtroom, look a judge in the eye, and say, "I want this man in my life." The courtroom was smaller than Eli expected. No grand marble floors or towering ceilings, just beige walls, stiff chairs, and the low hum of a humming HVAC system. But to him, it felt like standing in the middle of a storm. Vincent sat beside him wearing a dark blazer and no tie, a compromise. His hands were folded neatly, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his calm expression. On the other side sat Mrs. Evans, her purse clutched in her lap, eyes kind but focused. Eli's name was called. The judge was an older woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, and glasses that made her look like someone who read people before they spoke. She asked standard questions first: age, school, who he lived with. Eli answered clearly. Then came the one that mattered. "Eli," the judge said, "can you tell me in your own words why you want Mr. Blake to become your legal guardian?" The room was silent. Eli swallowed hard, then stood a little straighter. "Because he's shown up," he said. "Not just once. Not with money. Not to fix things. He just shows up. Every week. Every time. And when someone does that, you start to believe they're not going anywhere." The judge nodded, not smiling but listening intently. "And what does he mean to you?" Eli looked down at his shoes, then at Vincent. "He's the first person who made me feel like I belong somewhere, not just because he's my father, but because he treats me like I matter." Vincent blinked quickly. He didn't expect tears to come, but they did. The judge turned to Mrs. Evans. Do you support this transition? Mrs. Evans nodded. He's earned it. Finally, the judge addressed Vincent. Do you understand the responsibility? I do, Vincent said. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I know exactly what it means to be given a second chance, and I won't waste it. There was no dramatic pause, no speech. The judge simply nodded, signed the form, and said, "Petition for shared guardianship is approved." Just like that, it was done. Outside the courthouse, the sun broke through the clouds. Vincent offered Eli a quiet smile. "You okay?" he asked. Eli shrugged. "It's weird. I thought it'd feel huge." Vincent nodded. "It is, but sometimes big things come in quiet ways." They walked to the car in silence. But when they reached the door, Eli stopped. "I kept waiting for something to go wrong," he said suddenly. "Like it always does." Vincent waited. "But nothing did. You stayed. I'm still figuring that out." "I'll keep proving it," Vincent said. Back at the mansion, a surprise waited on the kitchen counter. Nora, Vincent's assistant, had arranged a small celebration. Balloons, 2 cupcakes, and a card that simply read, "Family is who shows up." Eli laughed. "This is so corny." "Yeah," Vincent admitted, "but she means well." Eli picked up a cupcake. "We're not doing candles, are we?" Vincent raised an eyebrow. "You afraid to make a wish?" "No, just afraid you'll sing." They ate in the kitchen, light spilling through the windows. No speeches, no fancy dinner, just peace. Later that evening, Eli disappeared into his room. Vincent started cleaning up. When he walked past the hallway, he noticed the boy's door was slightly open. Eli sat on the floor, sketching. "What are you working on?" Vincent asked. Eli turned the pad around. It was the two of them, not stylized, not abstract, just Vincent and Eli sitting on the porch, coffee mugs in hand. Vincent's face was relaxed. Eli was smiling. "You made me look younger," Vincent said. "You were having a good day." Vincent stepped inside. "So were you." Eli closed the book. "Yeah." He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. The drawing said it all. Fall arrived quietly, and with it a new rhythm, one no longer built on hesitation, but on trust. Eli's presence in Vincent's life was no longer occasional. It was part of the pattern. His sneakers by the door, his voice echoing through the halls, his questions at breakfast. He didn't call the mansion home right away, but he stopped calling it his place, too. It became something unspoken, understood. On weekends, they built things together. A new bookshelf for Eli's room, a bench for the garden. Eli insisted on painting it himself. "No rich guy colors," he warned, dipping the brush into deep blue. At school, Eli thrived. His art teacher nominated him for a regional scholarship program. When asked to submit a piece that meant the most to him, he chose the sketch of the porch scene, the one with him and Vincent sitting in silence, connected not by words, but by presence. Vincent hung the original in his study. He started making changes at work, too. He stepped down from a high-profile acquisition, redirecting funds toward affordable treatment access. Some board members were furious. Others called it brave. For the first time in years, Vincent didn't care what they thought. He cared about mornings with Eli, about stories told over dinner, about the quiet joy of being someone a child chose to trust. One evening in November, they walked through the neighborhood as leaves crunched beneath their feet. Eli pointed out a stray dog on the corner, shaggy, limping slightly. "Looks like he needs someone," Eli said. "You want to bring him home?" "Maybe," Vincent smiled. "We've got room." They brought the dog in, gave him a bath, and named him Chance. That night, as Vincent turned off the hallway lights, Eli called from his room. "Hey." Vincent stepped back. "Yeah?" There was a pause. Then, "Good night, Dad." He didn't say it dramatically. He didn't look up. He just said it like it had always been true. Vincent stood there for a second, unsure whether to respond or just breathe it in. Then he smiled. "Good night, son." And the door closed on a home that had finally become whole. A year later, Eli stood on a stage at the local youth architecture showcase, presenting a model of a shelter designed for foster teens. Modular, low cost, built with reclaimed materials. In the front row sat Vincent, quiet, proud, holding Chance's leash. When Eli finished, the audience applauded. Later, as they walked to the car, Eli asked, "Did I do okay?" Vincent looked at him. "You built something that matters, just like you always do." Eli smiled, eyes forward. They didn't need to say more. Sometimes the best stories aren't about beginnings or endings, but the people who choose to stay. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the people who've chosen to stay in your life. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Share this story with someone who might need to believe in second chances, in healing, and in the quiet power of simply showing up. And if you've ever felt like Eli or Vincent, lost, uncertain, searching for connection, remember, it's never too late to rebuild. Leave a comment below telling us which part moved you most. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.